like wake up at 5 a.m. and then go and like do my own class for 2 hours and then teach for 4 hours and then be like a dad then for the next afternoon and evening. So I'm just trying to figure it out. But I'm finding my way. I'm being gentle. I think that's like the key word for me is to be gentle because I was on such a roller coaster of being such. I mean, Boston Ballet is kind of like an army. Like I realized that we work way too much.
Yeah.
Like that company, I didn't realize that until I left, but we work so much. And then compared to other companies, I was like, I don't think other companies work like this. So
It
it's
should, from what
I
I've
guess I mean I guess maybe I don't know. I think it's
I've
like a
I've
blessing
seen a
and a
lot of
curse.
companies, and there are times when I think, they should have had a little more rehearsal time, maybe. Um, so it's so interesting. When you make this transition, my only tip for you is when you do teach, make sure you demonstrate on both sides, because I'm
Absolutely.
one side dominant, and I
Mhm.
realized I kept demonstrating or showing combinations just on one side and not doing it on the other.
Absolutely.
Heads up, friends.
Absolutely.
We've got some people starting to show up. So are there any last words
Nice.
before we let them in?
No.
All good. Here we go. Ooh,
Oh,
karate. Yeah.
karate.
I don't know why I did that, but it's cool.
Wait, how did you do that?
I
Oh,
don't know. She did
I think
that,
it's my
right?
laptop. I think it's updated. Let's see.
Oh my goodness. Hi,
Wow.
Morgan.
Hi, Morgan.
Here you are. Hi,
Hey
Morgan.
guys.
Welcome. Tell us a little about yourself.
Oh, I just moved to New York. I'm a movement artist. I will be joining a company shortly, but it's not official yet. So it's still on the down low. But I just moved to New York.
From
Yeah,
where?
from
From what?
Fairfax, Virginia.
Oh,
I
wow.
studied dance at George Mason for the past 4 years.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm super happy to be here with you all today.
So, did you audition for this company after you moved to New York, or did you get in before you moved?
After things like were in talks beforehand though, so
Nice.
yeah.
What a nice transition for you.
Truly, I feel really lucky, yeah.
Good. And where are you living?
I'm in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn right now.
Got it.
Morgan's an amazing mover and dancer. I've had her as a student a couple times. She's amazing.
Ah! Yeah, I love your class.
Well, we're delighted to have you with us.
Mine doesn't do that, karate. I tried.
I know. My goodness, you have a fancy laptop, I guess. Oh,
I don't know. I talk with my hands a lot, so I would be on FaceTime with friends and I just notice random things popping up sometimes. So it must be the laptop.
did you have to set something different?
I'm not that tech savvy, so it must have already been there. So, yeah.
Well, we're going to wait a few moments, Morgan. We're not sure how many people are going to be joining us. We're going to put the bios. You already know karate. We're going to put some links to bios in the chat just so that everybody has it.
John, you're at Boston Conservatory too?
Yes, I am.
I think I'm coming for 2 weeks in November.
Yes, I see.
You
I saw that you're coming.
They haven't given me my schedule yet, but I'm told I'm supposed to be there.
Yes, we've been told that you're coming, so hopefully the
Great.
schedule aligns.
That means I'll have to get in shape if I'm going to show up to your class. So
Oh gosh. I think that their teaching class is very different. I've actually really enjoyed teaching college students. It's usually I teach younger kids or adults. So I haven't really hit the like college conservatory age group. I mean, I've worked with them before, but to have them consistently has been very it's like a privilege because you get to really see these senior kids, you know, like, gosh, this is their last year and they're all like getting excited and you know, it's a lot for them to go through 4 years of the conservatory and then finally be like they're on their own and like what is that like and how do you face things and stuff. So it's cool because I can just share my lived experience and they can take it or not and I don't know. It's kind of a cool like tossing back, giving back type of deal thing.
Absolutely. Hi, Anne. Welcome.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little about yourself?
Sure. I am also teaching at Boston Conservatory, a Xena Romet floor bar class. And so I'm very excited to be here and to hear John and Keerati and just excited when Phil comes to visit in November.
Well, we're so happy that you could be with us today. Hi, Pa. Is it Paz?
Hi,
Hi, welcome.
thank you.
Can you tell us a little about yourself?
Oh gosh. Sorry, I had trouble signing on. So, hello everyone. My name's Paz Tanwakyo. I go by she, her. I am a choreographer, um, performer, educator, and co-founding director of Topaz Arts, Inc. in Woodside, Queens.
Nice. Wonderful. Where were you born?
I was born in the Philippines.
Ah,
My family immigrated in the 70s during the first Marcos regime. And I moved to New York City on my own in 1990 and have been here since.
oh, wonderful. I had the privilege of going on a U.S. State Department tour, and we were in the Philippines during the Marcos regime as well. We performed at that huge folk arts indoor outdoor. Yeah. Wow.
I was just there recently this summer. I performed at a university and at a gallery space. So it was good travel again. Hello, everyone.
Well, I'm going to get started. We might have some people joining us too. It is such a pleasure to have both John Lamb and Keerati Jinakunwiphat as our guests. I don't need to say that our dance landscape has changed so much post pandemic. And so I actually wanted to begin. Oh, if you check in the chat, I loaded in hyperlinks to both bios so that you can, click it on and just save it if you want to look back at it. But I really wanted to reserve most of the time today to really have a kind of dialogue with both of them. And so I'm going to start by asking both of you to talk a little bit about what you've observed as the key changes in the dance landscape. And it can be at any point in your career, but have there been certain things that you've noticed and perhaps that impacted both of you? I'm going to start with John.
I'll say Kirati go. So for me, I think that just recently retiring from the stage with Boston Ballet after 20 years, I think that I've noticed a more commitment to diversity within our dancers and female choreographers. That has been my experience at Boston Ballet. I'm not sure, so I only speak of what I know at Boston Ballet. I don't know what it's like elsewhere. But that's what I've noticed is I'm really trying to empower female voices and their visions, and really trying to, excuse me, cultivate a diverse amount of dancers that can be part of the company. I think that has been like kind of the forefront like needle of what I've noticed, because before, when I just came from the company, it was just choreographers, and I didn't realize there was such a huge divide, because I think once you're in it and you're this young, like, naive dancer, you just want work and you just want to dance, rather than understanding like the whole scope of like what's happening with the dance world and the choreographers and the visions and where it's coming from. I think that has been kind of highlighted for me.
Nice. What about you, Keerati?
Yeah, I feel like my first initial thought was, I don't know if it's because I'm like stepping away from company life that I feel it too, but I think in observing, I feel like dancers are freelancing more, the company life structure has kind of changed or shifted a bit, or the tenure isn't as long, like John is an amazing like 20-year streak at Boston Ballet, and I feel like that's so rare. Even like me doing AIM for like 8 seasons, like I feel like people are changing, moving around more, wanting maybe more experiences in a shorter time. But that's just a shift that I've been noticing recently. And I think even curious, I guess that was something like Phil was kind of talking about, how company structures will change. And I'm sure it has to do with funding and things too. And I know like people are interested in funding individuals more, which I hope is the case where I'm at. But yeah, just those are some things that I've observed recently.
So, when I look at the dynamic of our performing matrix, we've got so many stakeholders, and obviously our training institution's a key part of it. As I speak with artistic directors and choreographers, one comment that seems to arise is that they don't necessarily feel the new talent that's coming in are really equipped with the skills to know how to comport themselves in a dance company. And I would really be interested in your feedback, in particular, because you're involved with these young dancers in different ways. But I don't know, one of you.
Yeah, okay, I can go. Interesting. I wonder if it has to do with like maybe a generational thing or even a pandemic thing. I feel like because of restrictions for the pandemic, like for example, like partnering or contact improv, like they're not getting as many of those experiences just because of the situation of the world at a time, or a certain generation isn't. Which, when you're asked to do a duet or like work in a group setting, you might have less experience in that way. Maybe that's why. Yeah, that was just my first initial thought. I don't know. What about you, John?
I think the same, generational. I mean, I think that we're a little bit, I think we're trying to help the new generation move the needle forward, but it's tough if we don't give them like real life experience. And I think that's hard right now, because it's either you're like in a company or you're not in a company and you're just trying to find work. I don't know, maybe I feel like maybe or there's not as many jobs. I think that that's the other thing too. Maybe there's not enough opportunities to just, like, maybe directors or companies aren't risk taking and just taking anyone and everyone. I think they're a little bit more measured, perhaps. So then it gives less opportunity for people to just go and try. I don't know. Maybe I have to shout out to Amber. She just arrived. She's one of my students. She's right there. So hi, Amber. Thank you for joining.
Hi.
Welcome. So I want to sort of stick on this for a bit. Do you think that the inability to immediately step into what we know as the professional life has to do with how we are trained. In other words, that it's so much about the physical, the perfection, the body, rather than understanding who we are within that space and how we can use movement truly as a kind of different language to express our unique, distinct self within context of whatever the steps or choreography or combination are. Any thoughts on that?
Want me to go? You go.
Oh,
You.
yeah. Oh, I have a few things in mind, but I think training wise, well, I'll rewind a bit because just while John was speaking, it was making me think of like, when they're like, oh, must have 2 years experience, but they can't get the experience of a job. Like this is for like any job, and I will say, I remember people saying to me as I was leaving school that they learned the most when they were in their professional job, like outside of school. So it's like having that experience to gain that experience. But training wise, I wonder if it's how, like, I feel like to live like company lifestyle, I learned a lot in like summer intensives or like high intensity programs, of days. And I wonder if it's maybe more of those experiences. Yeah. And I also think preparing yourself besides training, I think mentally and emotionally is important too, feeding yourself as a human being outside of that, because that's how you show up in a room as well. So I think that matters just as much because, yeah, that's who people are getting to know and how you show up in a room also. Yeah, I don't know.
John?
Um, I I'm realizing that I have a different lens than Keerati because it's just, but I think it's great. I think it's good. I think that, I mean, it comes from, I guess I'm coming from both ends where, um, God, I don't know how to like put it all together and like make it make sense. It makes sense in my head, but I have to like put it in words, right? Okay, so, I think that like dancers, they want the work, they want to go out there and they are put in these situations where they're put into schools, academies, conservatories, wherever they train, and depending on how they were trained, I think really sets their path in a way. um but I also like am very careful about saying that because like I didn't come from like a super like crazy academy school in order to like make it into the dance world, right? So it could be viewed both ways. Like you can go to an academy, like a really strict one, and not make it, or you can go to like recreational ballet school and have like one good solid teacher, um not necessarily like intensive, but then make it. So I think it goes back to what you were saying, Bonnie, about the individual person, right? And I also tread lightly on that as well because I think that we shine a big spotlight on individual artistry and who we are as humans, which I do believe that that's like we have to hone that and figure out who we are. But like, I don't think that we really know who we are as artists in an exact moment. I think that we evolve. We have to be open to evolving to whatever artist you are from like when you come to this world. So I feel like it comes to like the initial like when you were born. Like if I don't know, for me, I was like dancing when I was 4. So like I was like dancing in the backyard. I was like I was like dreaming all these like ballets and I was like in every single character. So like that was me, and maybe other dancers don't have that experience, but maybe they're in like somewhere where they don't have access to dance, or they don't have access to like good academies, or they don't have access to good teachers, but somehow they make it. So it's hard for me to answer the question because it's like I kind of like weigh both equally, because it's like you can go through the academy way and you can also go through the non-academy way, and still make it or not make it. And I think that the only sure thing is developing who you are. And so it goes back to the individual and to like what like Keerati was saying, it's like who you are in order to show up. So, but I don't know, it's hard for me too, because as a professor and like teaching that too, like I don't want to also just tell my students like, okay, like you just like be you and like do you, right? And but that's so general, because then it's like, oh, but me being me is like showing up and like just not listening to any directive. And you're like, no, but like you can't just do that as well, you know, because the dance world doesn't, maybe it does for certain companies, but if you want to go into a company, like there's going to be someone in front of you, there's going to be a choreographer, there's going to be a vision, maybe they're collaborative, maybe they're not. You're gonna, you know, so like I don't know, like that's why it's like you can't be so individual that you're like free spirit, you can just do whatever you want to do. So I'm it's hard for me because I fight both because I'm
Well,
all about the individuality, but then at the same time, and I celebrate individuality, but I also want accountability for the individuality. I guess that maybe that's what I'm trying to say.
that's an important point. You know, during the 20 years that I was chair of dance at the Princess Grace Foundation, I do remember your work samples, John. And it's not just by chance that you were one of the award winners that year. In each of the samples, it wasn't just the movement, and you weren't just showing whatever the choreography was, but there was something inside of you that is so John that came through. And it's not just a story narrative, you know, because there was just some pure dance, but even within the pure dance, the flow, how you took space, how you defined yourself within the space was extraordinary. So I want you to think about your process as you're learning roles, because we're going to talk about process in a bit. And for Keerati, you know, I've seen you perform, I don't know how many times with Kyle Abraham's AIM. And even though you became a Princess Grace Choreography Award winner, I would have loved to have seen you be submitted for a performance fellowship, because like John, you inhabit the movement that might be 4 or 6 other people on stage, but my eye goes to you because it's as if you're discerning what it is that Kyle meant to say or describe or evoke, and you got it in your way to deliver it to me. So as a viewer, I zeroed into you because you tracked exactly what it was I was supposed to see or even perhaps feel. So again, I want you to go think about your process with Kyle. So let me go back to you, John. You know, let's face it, you have danced so many different roles, some abstract, some stories. What is your process when you take on a new role? It's what is beyond the steps? That's the question for both of you. What is your process beyond the steps?
My process beyond the steps. I mean, I think it takes time, it takes practice, to allow yourself to figure out how to go beyond the steps. You know, you can't, it doesn't just, so like when I think about the process of going through it, I don't feel like I always have it. And I don't, because I think that if you arrive and you say like you've already arrived and this is, you're here and you've done it and this is the way I'm going to do it, then there's no way of growing. And so for me, like just recently I did a piece with Keerati and she allowed me to be part of her work. So like for me, I try to, when I work with a choreographer that I've never worked with, I've never worked with Keerati, I try to understand like what she wants. So I'm working with the choreographer, like what the choreographer wants. But then at the same time, if the choreographer is willing to let me transcend into that choreography. So like, so it's also very situational, right? Because some choreographers don't want that. They want like Akram Khan. Akram Khan, I love his work. Don't get me wrong. I love his work. But he doesn't want you to interpret his work. He wants you to do his work. And so that's very hard because as a dancer, you have ego and you have to like take that ego out, like throw it out, and then take out the years and take the years out and literally just arrive like a child and just um
just
to
be.
be to be willing to be vulnerable and to be open and to be naive and to take risks in wherever this choreographer is going to take you. So like I think when I'm really thinking about the process, what you were saying, Bonnie, because I'm trying to dig deeper into that, is it's the ability to truly be open. I feel like if you are open, then you can it's a dear friend of mine, Sorella England, who's a repetiteur in the Royal Danish Ballet and an incredible mentor to me. She would always say, John, you're like a chameleon, and you have to be able to change the shades of who you are as an individual, culturally, how you identify yourself in the world, and then let it go, and then allow the choreographer's vision to seep in, and then let it go, and then take all of it and then see what makes sense when the time comes for the performance. But all of that can't happen if the choreographer doesn't come 50-way and if the dancer doesn't come 50-way. You know what I'm saying? So like if a choreographer is like, no, and they just like, and Bonnie, you know, like I've been in situations where I couldn't achieve what the choreographer wanted me to do. And so you start to go into this wall, and it gets very difficult because you can't move forward. So in those situations, I've learned to just continue to just be open, because there's no sense of becoming defensive and closing up more, because then it will just, the choreographer has like a bigger picture. They have to go through so much, from a visionary way to a storytelling way to like what the big picture of the choreographic scope is, and we are just a small little sliver of what their idea is. So like for me, like I really try to just be like that vessel for the choreographer. And I don't know if dancers view that way. I mean, you can ask Keerati when she danced, you know, like if that's how she worked. For me, that's how I worked, because we always had reps, so we always had choreographers come. And so that opportunity, that experience gave me that chance to just really be open and curious. And that has been and will be served me to trust the process. Because there were, I mean, in the beginning with Keerati, like I was like, I don't know if I could do this. Because it was in the summer and I was doing a toile and I was in a different mindset because I had just bowed, and I'm like, okay, like I'm not gonna like, I was like, I'm not gonna dance anymore. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I'm dancing, and then all of a sudden I'm doing like choreography that like I'm not particularly comfortable with. So I was like, okay, I just gotta be open, like I usually am, you know. But it's hard as you age, because as you age, you experience, and as you experience, you start to latch on to things that make you feel good. And I try to get that little feeling of good, but then at the same time brush it out and be like, you got to feel uncomfortable, because if you feel uncomfortable, then you care. Then you care about the work. You care about what you're doing. Because then what's the point of dancing? Like, what's the point of me saying yes to Keerati, I'll do your work, you know? Because it doesn't make sense then, right? For me, if I'm still curious and it still puts me in an uncomfortable situation a little bit, then I can
It
rely on the
means you're
process.
growing. Yeah.
Yeah, that I'm growing. So anyway, so that's
before-
my long answer.
So many jewels in that. Keerati, before you start, as you were talking, John, I was flashing on a period of time when I was with the Graham Company, and Martha was creating a new work with Rudolph Nureyev and Dame Margot Fontaine, speaking of being uncomfortable. And she was already very advanced, and she had on her little ballet slippers, and Rudy was barefoot. And he got very snippy at her and said, well, if you want to remain comfortable, you can.
Wow.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what age you're at. I think that
Right.
if you're really in it to grow. So karate.
Okay. Hmm. The initial question was, what does it take beyond the steps?
Was, yeah, beyond the steps process.
Yeah. Because I've been thinking about it. Also, thank you, John, for challenging yourself with me. I appreciate it. Yeah. I think, okay, my initial thought was kind of in learning something. I think maybe it's because I've been teaching a lot too. Been really looking a lot at details as I try to build whatever this intention, character, what the piece is. So anytime I'm learning something new, really trying to catch those things or isms, especially if the choreographer is new. I think also in like recent times, being a choreographer too, feel like I'm listening for very specific things or even watching them teach or talk to other people, you know, just really settling in someone else's world in a way. I think a lot of my experience being with Kyle, I don't know if this is a cop out, but I felt like I was able to show up as myself and in most works or like tap into different parts of myself. And maybe that's also a thing of like, because when you act, you're just being too, but you're tapping to different parts of yourself. So I feel like I was kind of doing that in ways, or, you know, getting to this part and watching it extend in different ways. I definitely understand the concept of uncomfortability. Feel like in my actually one of my final shows with Kyle, he has this really beautiful Nina Simone suite, and it was a solo that I had, and I think it's even now it's so hard for me to be on stage alone, really be seen, even these quiet moments. So that was a really good challenge for me. Yeah, I definitely cried on a few tours and it was fine. You know, it's just like accepting and growing and yeah, that's all
So
I have.
I want to pull one more thread
Yeah,
out of the
please.
sort of silo that we're going into is can we talk about how you began to use the rehearsal as part of you building artistry and craft as a performer? You know, when I think about when I left Juilliard and got my first job, I don't think I really understood how to use rehearsal time. And it was sort of revelatory working with Martha. And she said, you know, the rehearsal is more important than the performance because it's in the rehearsal that you're really meeting and understanding what the parameters are, how far you can push. You don't want to take those risks on stage, but you can take the risks in rehearsal to see what's happening, that you can feel whatever you know want to in rehearsal, but in performance you pull back and you use those moments as signposts in the journey road of the composition so that you make the audience feel instead of you know, sort of doing your thing. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, initially, I feel like what you were saying kind of brought me back to kind of how you're talking about newer generations, like being ready for company life, because I think the rehearsal process is so important. And I think how you show up rehearsal, even when you're not necessarily being worked with, you know, just catching on to these certain things. And I feel like sometimes with new generations, people are on their phones, like on the side, they think it doesn't pertain to them and they're missing out on so much information. Um, yeah, but
So was
wait.
there a certain point even in your arc, your performative arc, where
Mhm.
you finally understood how to use rehearsal?
I think that is always growing and molding and also subjective to the piece I'm working on, whether I'm dancing it, even when I'm choreographing too, rehearsal is always going to look a little different. And I think it's such a skill as a dancer and choreographer to really read a room too, which it can be hard sometimes, you know, or yeah, thinking of kind of what we were saying before, like showing up as an individual is always great, but it has to come with accountability and how you can be of service in community, I think, for me. So like those have to come together. But yeah. Does that make sense? Okay. What about you, John?
So I yes, I think that rehearsal is a um it's an incredible tool to have. And I think you're right. I'm learning that as a professor where you can see students this has not happened to me yet. So no shade or anything because I don't numbers there. But like no, like honestly, like I have not witnessed any of my students like go off to the side and not know what to do. But I think that because they're students, they don't know um, the short amount of time you have in order to arrive at performance level. So like I learned that quite early with work with Billy Forsyth, where his work is so extreme that there even so Boston Ballet was the first company to do Artifact, like the full Artifact. ABD has an Artifact suite and all this stuff, but we did full Artifact, and that is a huge production. It's massive, it's crazy, and you just want to die at the end. But we worked on that for 3 months, and that's a lot of work time for a company that has rep with other ballets as well. And I remember him telling us in like week 4, okay, we need to start from the beginning and you need to perform it. And we were like, what? We just took the steps. And he's like, I need you to, he would always say, I need you to practice performance. And so that kind of dug into my head where I was like, yeah, you're right. Because it's like, if you don't practice performance, how will we arrive to the highest point of where we need to be at opening night? Because opening night shouldn't be the beginning of to getting to that peak, right? It should be at the peak. And that peak should even go even higher at Saturday night and even Sunday matinee, right? And so that was always kind of like the mindset that I had when I would go into rehearsal. And that really served me well. There's we think that we have so much time, but we just don't have enough time. I mean, I'm seeing the conservatory. We just don't have enough time. There's not enough time, like what Keerati's saying about details. Like I think that we fit companies and schools and conservatories face time where like there's not enough time to take the time for the details. Because if you get the details, then once you get those details, then you can really bring the richness of that ballet in that rehearsal to where it needs to be. And I think that's when the audience can realize like, oh, that was like a really good piece, or like that was a good performance, or whatever it is. I mean, Akram Khan, like I go back to this because I think that was the most crazy rehearsal time that I've ever had in my career. Usually you work with 4 different choreographers, 5 different ballets at the same time, and then you rehearse everything, and then you drop and you do the show. And that's like how I've been doing whatever for the past 20 years. And Akram, he requested to work with his dancers for 4 months, only the dancers. So for 4 months, we were locked into the studio with just him and his 18 dancers. No second cast, only first. There was only one group. That's it. So if you got injured, it was like you as an artist in his piece would have to know the right side, left side, and front. So you would have to learn like three different versions at the same time. And this was very different for us for rehearsal. And we're just like, what? And the thing was like the whole cast was seasoned principals and seasoned soloists. So it's not like we were going into this blindly, but at the same time we were, because we had to like rip everything of what we knew, what rehearsal was, and really go with him. And that rehearsal period was, I think, very transformative in terms of just um, of repetition. So I hesitate saying repetition because I do believe that repetition allows you to face when you're really tired, and once your physical and mind is very tired, that's when you can really see where you need to be. And so I think that that is a good way of working, but I also see the other side of things where people are like, "Well, you don't need to keep rehearsing to kill your body, because your body's your vessel, you should take care of it." And I get that part too. Um, but from my experience, the choreographers that I've worked with for the past 20 years, it's like no pain, no gain kind of situation where it's like you either have to produce or not. So like if you don't produce, then that's on you. So like you have to have repetitive rehearsals in order to put yourself out there. And it's hard because that's like, how many nutcrackers have I done? How many cavaliers have I done? And I still have to do it. And I still have to repeat. And I still have to run it. Because if I don't run it, I know it's going to kill me. And I'm still doing nutcrackers this year, even because like I'm not gonna do it. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. So like, my partners here in Boston, it's like, John, just do it with us. I'm like, fine, I'll do it. So like I will do the nutcracker. I'm still wear the white tights and whatever. But like I know that I still have to really face those rehearsals. Because if you don't face the rehearsals, then the end result is not gonna be as great. But same breath is also situational depending on the piece. If it might be a piece that really doesn't need repetition, and like you can still be able to achieve what you want. So it really, you could probably tell that Boston Ballet wasn't one of those companies that like went like the chill way. We were always like 100. It was always like 100. So we were just always like ballet class was always 100, and doing rehearsals was always 100. It was never like, it was never chill. So like, so I'm just used to that. Like I'm used to that notion of of working for 45 minutes, and then the last 15 minutes you're running it. And that's every hour. For 6 hours we would do that. We would run every single ballet. So I could run like 6 ballets in a day, and then the next day do the same thing. So like we would just have to do that. Like that was just something that we had to do. And I give tribute to Miko, the director, because he instills that in all of us. You know, he forces that type of community where it's like we have to rehearse. And it comes from also Russell Kaiser, who's artistic associate, who comes from the City Ballet, which is funny because City Ballet doesn't rehearse that much because their rep is already ingrained. So they know their rep, like they know Jules, they know who's going to do Diamond, they know who's going to do Prodigal Son, so they know the roles, right? So it's less rehearsals. For us, it's like it's always new rep, and you always have to just work so diligently and smart to just get to where you want to be. So that's
Well,
my answer.
No, it's great. So many just little wonderful, as I said, jewels. So let's talk about performance for a while. You know, it was both of you do a lot of performance. I mean, Keerati, because AIM was touring so much, and John, just because of your seasons with Boston Ballet. It was a revelation for me when we were touring about 9, 10 months out of the year, how not to get to a place where I was trying to replicate a performance, but really trying to live in it as if for the first time. I mean, it really took me a long time. I mean, how do you approach that? How do you approach not getting burned out on rep?
Huh. I feel like my answer is a little easier because we always had a lot of different rep in the mix. So it's not like, you know how like a Broadway show, they do the same show all the time. I feel like at most we'd have 7 runs of a show. Yeah, which were usually really fun, honestly. Maybe it was because of the rep we were doing that we felt like we could step into and experience it. So sometimes it usually has to do with the work. But yeah, I feel like I always said that about AIM too. I felt like we had nice rotating, like we had 2 evening lengths going around and mixed rep programs and all that stuff. So I felt like I had a good balance and mix that I wasn't, yeah. It was mostly maybe like the schedule of it that might be like exhausting, like when we do the tech and we're in the theater all day. But yeah, the rep was always reviving to me. So for the most part.
I love rep. I mean, I think that I've been very lucky with I mean, that's why I chose Boston Ballet. You know, like Boston Ballet just has like a killer season, and Miko just brings in really beautiful choreographers, and the work that he brings in already speaks to me as an artist. So just being part of any work always allowed me to just revisit the work in a fresh way. And I think that also like you get to a point where you work so hard and you rehearse so much that when you get to like dress rehearsal the night before opening night is an interesting weird gray area where it's like, you know, do you push yourself to the max so you just see where you can go, or do you trust the process of like where it's going to land? And I can think of like so La Sophie when I did James, which is technically very very difficult. This is the Bournonville style, but what helped me revisit it and make it fresh for me was the portrayal of the storytelling. So like I feel like in classical ballet or in contemporary um, works, you always have to find some sort of story, even if the choreographer doesn't say anything to you. Like for me as an artist, I have to find some sort of story or narrative in it so that I can then like latch onto it and then find something new. So you, I don't know. I think because we worked on so many different choreographies, we never stay like we couldn't stay at one ballet for so long. I think the longest I worked on a piece was for Tupperman's when we went on tour to Spain for a month and a half, and I had to do Melancholic like so many times, and that was like really hard because you're just like, how do you revisit a role that you do all the time? But going to, I don't know, maybe Keerati has this experience too, but when you go on tour, it's different theaters, different smells, different dressing rooms, different audiences. And that also gives you a sense of newness, that it's like a new show and a new opening night. And so for me, that helped like bring something new. And oddly enough, like, I don't know why this is, but it's brought up in my head, but like, I'll also just being not a typical dancer. Like when I joined the company, it was primarily white, and I was like maybe one of a few Asian male dancers. And I'm not like a tall, like 6 foot dancer as well, so I wasn't like a princely look. So I was always looked as kind of like that kind of like black sheep kind of person. But what harnessed me to keep going was that I would always bring me. I would always bring John. Like I would always try to keep that value system of who I am to the table, which I think then dictated like how you approach the work and that everything was fresh. Because I was very grateful to be there. Like I was like, I should not be here.
I
Like
love
that was my sense. Like I
Yeah.
shouldn't be here. Like I don't
Yeah.
know why they chose me to like do this Prince role, and all of a sudden now I'm doing this opening night, and I'm like, okay, I'll do it. But like, there's something that can do
No,
it better.
but that's really important, and it's part of the last segment that I want to talk about is as an AAPI dancer. Did you ever suffer from imposter syndrome, or did you find it was a hindrance, or was it a non-issue? I mean, you're both in two different fields, in different worlds, literally, you know, and you factor in your own upbringing. So any thoughts about that?
Ooh, many things. Okay. What should I tackle first?
Anyone or
Okay.
both?
Wait, can you ask the first one again?
Yes. So
Please.
was being an AAPI dancer an advantage or hindrance, or did you suffer from imposter syndrome?
Okay.
Any of the
Cool. Got it. Thank you for repeating that for me. I think this is something I'm super grateful for, and I thank my family and my parents for it. Ever since I was young, even if I stood out for being Asian, it was like in a nice way to me. It felt like a superpower since a young age, which I know can be rare for people. So I just have to say that first. So I'm very grateful for that. Yeah. And yeah, like even when I was at Purchase College, I was the only Asian person in my class, which people would find so crazy now. But I was like, okay, well, this is me. Like, I'll just do it for all of us. Like, it's fine, you know? Like, I don't know. I didn't mind it. I was really grateful to always like be proud of who I am, you know? Yeah. And I don't know, sometimes I feel like graduating too, sometimes you see certain companies and you're like, oh, they already have their like token Asian person or something. So I felt like a little of that at times, maybe, but I knew I would find a place for me. And I'm just so grateful to have landed in AIM. I think it's such a special place. Yeah. And it's a primarily like Black company, but I feel like just everything that the company, the people stand for, allow me to be myself even more, you know, even being like the only Asian person or two. So I think that's super special. As for imposter syndrome, this is funny, right? I don't know, because also in this transition too, things have shifted a bit. And like in the redirecting, you know, first sometimes it feels like I'm far from myself, but I know I'll come back type thing. I realized that I did have imposter syndrome because I renamed it as like, oh, you know, sometimes I feel like an industry plant or whatever. So I kind of had this like delusion of like renaming it, but it's the same thing and it's normal to feel that way type thing, if that makes sense. So yeah, yeah. And yeah, I don't know. That's all I have right now.
Beautiful. I think that I agree with Kirati that, you know, like, like I think it comes from your family, like how you were brought up. Like, um, I come from a very interesting family, I think. And I only laugh because it's like they love me and they taught me to be a good person, a human being, but they only came to see my final bow professionally. They never saw me dance. So my 20 years in Boston, they never saw me develop as a human being on stage, and so it's hard to like still pay tribute to my cultural heritage, which I really strongly believe in because I believe that that has guided me to be who I am. But in terms of like identifying as like Vietnamese American, it's been hard on the like cultural side, right? But when I see myself in the ballet world, like Miko saw something very special in me when I was only 13. I met him at 13 years old. I was a child, and he had followed my career and offered me a job when I graduated, and I just stayed with him. So, and I stayed with him because my mom would say to me, "You stay with the people that will care for you." So, like, I'm like, oh, I guess you're right because you know you listen to your mom, right? Like she's you know like if they're gonna care for you, like you know you gotta trust that care. Um, and so I took that chance and I stayed here and that's when I also came out as a gay man, found my husband, and then raised a family and still dance. But being an Asian dancer at Boston Ballet at initially at first and most of the time I thought that that would I still think it was um a good thing because there wasn't so many Asian men. Now there are. Miko started to bring in more Asian dancers. Like we had a Mongolian dancer, we have Korean dancers, we have a Chinese dancer, um, and I thought that that was beautiful that he kept bringing like Asian male dancers because we tend to come small packaged, you know, we're smaller. But he would love tall women. So you're just like, how are you gonna do like tall women, short men? But he didn't believe in that. So like his way of seeing things was just the pure talent. So I felt that I never felt that that was a detriment. Only in situations when there would be choreographers that would come in and um, especially classical ballets that would look at me and you know because I was a principal dancer I would only be allowed to only dance as principal roles. So if it was only Prince Siegfried or if it was only Romeo, um, depending on who would set the ballots, they're like, well, we've never seen an Asian Romeo before in this version. And you're like, well, I can't change that, you know? So it's tough. Like, and I did face that, right? But it didn't make me like it sucks, but then at the same time I'm like, well, I'm not gonna like let that sweat. Like it's like, okay, like if you, I always was brought up like, okay, like if they don't want me, like then my worth isn't going to be given to you to like take the time to like figure out like why you didn't want me and whatever, right? um and imposter syndrome, I mean, I think I found that a bit after, actually, after when I mean, I think always wanting to achieve um, a high standard of excellence, you also have to have that humility of like wondering, like, is it good? Is it good enough? So I feel like you always kind of have a little bit of imposter syndrome throughout your career. But what I felt the most of imposter syndrome was actually when I arrived to New York, after I did my final bout on E12, which we just filmed for 3 months. And I had realized that I was coming in as a seasoned, experienced dancer. And I had other dancers that were like babies, like new, like apprenticeship babies. And I'm like, how am I dancing next to an apprenticeship? He's like 19, I'm 39. I'm like, how are we dancing together? And I'm wearing tights and he's wearing tights. I was like, I don't feel comfortable wearing tights. So then I started to like think like, maybe I should stop. Like maybe I'm that dancer where you're like, oh my God, you need to just like retire, like really retire, like just stop, stop, stop. But then I realized like, no, like why do I have to stop if other people think that I can keep it going, then I guess I should keep going, right? So you know, I felt it more in the entertainment industry actually than in the ballet world um of the imposter syndrome. And I don't know if that's because of my of how I was brought up and surrounding yourself with people that love you and care for you and kind of is always there for your back. And of course, my husband, he's on the call. But like, you know, you always have someone that's there to like kind of give you the perspective. I think perspective is always key in making sure that you have a healthy like mindset moving forward. Because things are never really going to go your way and you have to kind of divert and then make it work. So yeah.
Well, it's a wonderful note to bring this to a close. I am so grateful that both of you made time. This has been such a wonderful, enlightening, inspiring session. And thank you all for joining us today. I'm going to bring Phil back to talk a little bit about Gold Standard and our membership drive. This is actually the final program of our 2024 year. And so I'm just grateful for having such a wonderful sort of way to bring it to a close. So, Phil.
Thank you so much, Bonnie, and thank you again, Keerati and John, for being so vulnerable and open with us tonight. Just a little note, Gold Standard is the Asian service organization for Asian creatives in dance. This came out of the shooting in Atlanta where we realized, oh, we need to have community. We can't be pitted against each other, fighting for that one Asian slot on the program. We need to work together. We need to share resources. We need to expand each other's tool belts. We need to lift each other up. So that's really our effort. We do have a membership program. It's $25 a year. It's literally like NPR. And we need to get more members so that we can go to larger funders and say, hey, look at this community we're building. Please give us money. We're about to embark on a $100,000 campaign next year, which will launch our Gold Standard Community Fund. 100% of those dollars are going to be reinvested into the community in the form of choreographic prizes. We're launching a film festival in 2025. As well as some research grants. So we're really trying to raise up the community by working together, and we are stronger together, and that's really our motto. So please bring a friend, please tell folks. We do have one more upcoming event this year on October 28th in partnership with the Museum of Chinese in America. We're having an Asian creative dinner. So if you'd like to meet other Asian artists in different disciplines who want to work in dance, costume designers, lighting designers, set designers, filmmakers, choreographers, dancers, please join us. More information's on our website and our Instagram. Keerati will be there. I saw her RSVP earlier this week. So if you want to see Keerati and chat with her, follow up in person, I will be there. Keerati will be there. And so, yeah, we would just love to have more friends as part of our community. So if you are free, feel free to head over to Gold Standard Arts and join on our website. So thank you again so much for tuning in tonight, and have a lovely evening. Thank you
I
again,
would
Bonnie.
also add that one of the benefits of becoming a member is you have access to past events online. So even if you weren't able to participate live, you can go back and look at different things on financial, on career transition, on solidarity and activism. It truly, Gold Standard is an amazing resource. So again, thank you, Keerati and John. Thank you for joining us. Have a good, safe rest of your week, and much aloha to everybody.
Thank you so much, folks. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.